do a meditation?
Yes.
Okay, what, half an hour, I guess. Let's meditate for about half an hour. I'll give some instruction and then I'll be quiet. So take a posture that you can sit comfortably in and stay relatively still for the half hour. Listen to sound. Let the sounds come to you. Don't define the sounds, just let sound come to you. So you establish receptive awareness. Feel your body sitting here. Just a general feeling of the body. No, just let that become conscious. Listen to sound. Perceive sound as in awareness. Perceive awareness as space. Spacious consciousness. Sounds changing in awareness. So you're not concentrating on sound or focusing on a particular sound or judging the sound or analyzing the sound. It's just the movement of sound in awareness. And notice the stillness of that awareness. Feel your face. Feel the sensations in the face. And this is in awareness as well. So let the feelings in the face become conscious. I'll begin with your mouth. Let the sensations in the mouth become conscious. In other words, you're not concentrating on anything in the mouth. You're localizing attention, receptive awareness. And there's the feelings in the lips, in the teeth, in the palate, whatever manifests. Awareness is space. And bodily feelings are movement. Notice the silence of awareness. Make conscious the feelings in your ears. Feelings in the nose, the nostrils, the bridge of the nose. And once again, you're not concentrating on the nose. You're just allowing whatever feelings might be there to become conscious. So it's the same receptive awareness. And the feelings of the body are in awareness. Be that awareness. So if you concentrate on the nose, your eyes will get tight. Your forehead will get tight. So bring attention to the eyes. Eyes are in awareness. Objects in awareness. You're not sitting behind your eyeballs looking out. The eyes are in awareness. Notice the silence. Be that awareness. Feel your whole head as a mass of sensations, vibrations, energies. Perceive the head in awareness. Awareness as space, conscious space. Make conscious the feelings in both shoulders, both arms, both hands, large area, as sensation, receptive awareness. Go to your torso. Feel the torso from the abdomen all the way up to the neck, the back, the front, the organs, spinal column, this large area. Let that be conscious. You're not looking for anything, so whatever manifests, just let it be. The important thing is the awareness. Be the awareness. Feel your hips, thighs, knees, down to the feet, both sides, objects in awareness. Feel the whole body, not as concept, not as idea, but as sensation. Awareness, knowing bodily sensations in awareness. Perceive awareness as space. Now listen to sound. Changing sounds are in awareness. Objects in awareness. Bodily sensations changing also in awareness. So both are objects in awareness. Be that awareness. Allow awareness to be space, conscious space. Perceive it that way. Notice the silence of that awareness. So be that silent awareness. This is not easy. You have to be very patient with the thinking mind. Don't try to get rid of thought, but try to perceive thought as the objects that come and go in awareness. So keep stepping back into that witnessing space. Remembering that thoughts are in awareness, body is in awareness, memories are in awareness, and so on. All right, so let's sit quietly with those ideas. when you awaken to thought, in that moment of noticing, do you try to get rid of thought? That doesn't work. When you notice thought, then see it as an object. Just reestablish the sense of witnessing awareness. It's like this. Sound, go back to sound. Feel the body. And then be very, very patient with the thinking mind. These very, very simple steps of establishing the awake mind it's very important, because you can be just struggling with thought, but never awaken the mind. Just be in a kind of reaction to thought. And we're not trying to react to thought, but we're turning away from it to the awakened mind. So when you've noticed that you're thinking, actually thought has stopped. There's a moment there of like a gap. So when you notice you've been thinking, and notice the end of thought. Listen to sound. Perceive awareness of space, conscious space. Peter, are you there?
ที่เป็นสมาธิหลวงพ่อ Let's just let us all now put our palms together and join me in requesting the Dhamma talk. Brahma Charota Dibati Sahampati Tatanjali Anand Diwaran Ayachata Santida Sata Hara Jaka Jatika De Setu Dhamma Alukam Pimang Pajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So, good morning, good evening to everyone, or good afternoon. Hope you're well. Here at the monastery, it's late spring, early summer, and it's gorgeous. We had a very slow spring, so we had some cold weather last week, went down to 4 degrees, which knocks back the mosquitoes. It's great. Don't like mosquitoes. We get clouds of them sometimes. And then all the monks seem to be okay, working hard, working very, very hard. And I have a trip planned to Italy. John Chandapalo in Santa Citarama, our branch monastery east of Rome, has invited me to attend their a ceremony to open their Dhamma hall, SEMA ceremony, which they had hoped to do just before COVID, and then COVID came and had it closed down. And he says there'll be 100 monks there, which is pretty staggering, for me at least. And Luang Por will be there too, so I think it would be a very inspiring time for sure. So I've been dipping into Wikipedia and looking at Italy and Rome and monasteries and galleries and all kinds of things. Wikipedia is just a series of rabbit holes, isn't it? You go from one link to another. Anyway, it's been fun. So that's, of course, got me thinking about my own culture. What culture have I lived in for, these 50 years as a monk. And one could say I was sort of raised in Thai culture, but monastic culture has a kind of national flavor. Sri Lankan monasticism, Thai monasticism, but it's really more than any kind of national identity, because its core principle is spiritual friendship, kalyana mitta. And so sometimes we say monks live by Dhamma Vinaya, Dhamma being the teaching of transcendence, realization of the way things are, and Vinaya being the way we live together as a community, as communities. And that's, again, as I often say, this is something that lay folk don't necessarily have immediate access to. You could read the books, visit a monastery, but a lot of the ideas about lay life come from some of the ideas that the Buddha laid out for the bhikkhus. And the real central idea is this idea of spiritual friendship, kalyana mitta. And I have such really profound friends and such a large circle of associates in my monastic life, and then all the connections from the monasteries to lay people, that it's been staggeringly rewarding for me. It really has. So thinking about kalyana mitta, I mean, sort of many things that come to mind, but one of the things that is important to remember about Buddhism, that it's a reflective teaching rather than a belief teaching. Not that you can't believe, but reflection is so important, because reflection isn't the attachment to an ideal. So if we think about the Brahma Viharas, the 4 abodes of the heart, which the Buddha said are good to develop, good to contemplate, and good to encourage, of loving kindness or goodwill, compassion, joy, peace, that these as attachment to ideals can really make you feel quite inadequate. But as reflections as kind of mirrors to my own behavior, they're brilliant, they're absolutely brilliant. And so kalyana mitta, for one of the things for me is that I have friends who reflect back to me patterns of standards and patterns of emotional life and patterns of carefulness that help me to remember these patterns in my own mind. And I, in turn, hopefully will help them. So if I'm very judgmental about something or a bit harsh about something, and that's my perception, it should be this way, or that person shouldn't be that way. And then another monk has a different perception. He has a perception, well, the person's tired, or something going on in their life. What I can see then is my perceptions aren't absolute. I don't even have to say that my perceptions are wrong. I can just say, well, because he's my spiritual friend, well, he sees it different than me. And that's tremendously helpful, because it brings us to the kind of core of Ajahn Chah's teaching, was that perceptions are uncertain. And my definitions of the world and who I am, who you are, who other people are, these are uncertain. And that uncertainty it's not like just being in doubt all the time. It's not being arrogant. It's having a sense of humility around, and then from that humility, you can say, well, where's that perception coming from? Where's that arising from? And then maybe I see that perception is arising from fear, from aversion. And then I really am practicing the culture of kalyana mitta, because now I'm being a spiritual friend to myself. I'm really looking at my heart and why do I perceive the world in that way? What's going on? And not in just a self-judgment way. Self-judgment is, of course, the attachment to ideals. So as ideals, I say I should always, be patient with people and be perfectly compassionate and understanding, have insight about their problems and all that, which is impossible, because we're all human beings. But if I don't have if I don't have a reflection of other human beings, then I could really believe my own perceptions and get quite lost in them. That's why being a hermit is very difficult. Not that I suggest that anyone here do hermit practice, but it's actually very, very difficult to be alone for long periods of time, not just for 1 month retreat or something like that, and not get lost in your own perceptions and definitions of the world. So the teachings of loving kindness, metta, or goodwill are tremendously important in the culture of Kalyanamitta, in the culture of monasticism, in the culture of Buddhism. And they're not about art. They're not about religious structures. And they're not about dogma either. It's not about intellect and language and being clever. Because loving kindness is not a clever thing, is it? I mean, it's smart to have loving kindness, yeah. But it's not a matter of an opinion. It's something that you intuit, you feel, you respond to, you act out of. And so that as an ideal has caused me a lot of suffering. I don't know about you, but I've quite often been very tyrannical to myself. Say, oh, you don't like this, why are you so judgmental? Or, which again is not really mindfulness, it's not reflection. So the idea of reflection is here is a possibility of the human heart. Here's a possible way of evolving your own spiritual life, your own community life, your own family life. And it entails goodwill to all beings, unbounded all over. So I can read that, and boundless loving kindness, all directions, everywhere. But when push comes to shove, and there's someone that whatever does something, and I feel aversion arising, if I'm attached to the ideal of loving kindness, then I'll take it personally, which is ego. But we're not trying to take it personally, but we are taking personal responsibility. So in that moment, the arising of aversion in this instance isn't my fault. I mean, it's not deliberate. It's the result of the habits and intentions that I've made in the past. So the past has tremendous momentum into the present, doesn't it? Can't change the past. I can't do that, but I can recognize that this arising of aversion in my heart is an object in awareness. And is it worthy for me to participate in that energy, or is it more worthy just to bear witness to it and let it cease? Is it a good energy, and so on? So then the practice of mindfulness is not a judgment, obviously. I mean, we know that. We just need to keep remembering it. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, for me, it's taking a long time. This life of the liberation of the heart. And now, why is that? Like we talk about akalika Dhamma. The Dhamma is timeless, not a matter of time. Well, the awakened mind is timeless. Like when I suggest to you, awaken to sound. That awakened mind is timeless. It's not something you get later. You just keep noticing it, keep referring to it, keep taking refuge in it. So that's not a matter of time. But what is a matter of time are the emotional constructs, the cultural constructs, all the rest of it that come through consciousness. And that's where we have to have tremendous patience and self-compassion and care. We have to actually care for these things. So to care for aversion seems a contradiction, but it's true. Awareness is a caring. I give my attention to something rather than bearing attention with some kind of aversion to it. So the more we can reflect on the feelings of non-aversion, the feelings of goodwill, they become a beautiful mirror in which the other things can come forward. It's okay. I have no choice. I have no choice. But as they come forward, I no longer take them as a principle of developing my spiritual life, obviously. But I also don't try to get rid of them. And so this is the idea of things ceasing. They cease in consciousness when they're allowed to be conscious and when they're witnessed as objects rather than being the subject. rather than taking them personally. And yet there is still personal responsibility, because if there is a misunderstanding about the arising of, say, in this case, aversion, and I make a judgment, I shouldn't be that way, that very shouldn't be that way is aversion. It creates more aversion, more suffering, more suppression, or whatever. So there is a choice to be made, but the choice is based on cause and effect. What's going to be the best result from this, the arising of this feeling, this perception in the mind? What's the best way to deal with this? First and foremost, it's to recognize it. This is an object. It feels this way. And the object's creating perceptions of what? Me and you, I don't like you, or whatever. And as I witness to it, I can touch the silence of awareness even within negative emotions. But if I just try to have positive emotions and then fight all the time, that's not really awareness. That's idealism. That's the kind of, like the language of Luang Por used, inner tyranny, and so on. And Kalyana Mitta is the idea that our spiritual companions can help us to reflect that, because our spiritual companions are both, I was thinking, like in a community, you have a certain amount of paramita, a certain amount of strength and virtuous qualities in the Sangha, both as individuals and as a group, but you also have a lot of defilement, because all of us are working on understanding ourselves. So it's a mixed bag for each individual and for the community. So sometimes when my defilements are strong, then another monk whose paramitas, whose strength of understanding can reflect back from me, can help me with that. Or vice versa, when I'm stronger and he's caught up in something, I can reflect back for him. But the thing is the humility to listen, isn't it? So when we take positions, even about our own views and opinions, that position taking in many ways prevents us from actually contacting our Kalyana Mitta. I've seen that so often. I'll have a perception about science or politics or people, and I'll think it's right. Of course I think it's right. I'm never wrong. It's natural. But then another monk has a different perception. What? And my immediate kind of temptation is to say, how can you think like that? But then, no, wait a minute. No, this is just perception. This is just the way the world gets invented. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't have opinions. I can't make judgments. I have to make judgments because it's a real world. But I can try to monitor where they're coming from. And so the liberation of the heart away from greed, hatred, delusion, towards the Brahma Viharas, towards love, towards compassion, towards joy, towards peace. This is a kind of happening at the level of encouraging the kindness and discouraging the unkindness. And so it takes a long time for most of my co-religionists. It takes a heck of a long time. And yet the understanding is there. So I think I asked someone in the Sangha the other day, is there a perception around in popular Buddhist culture that if you meditate furiously and you just like go, like really bang away at it and just meditate, that you'll have some kind of mushrooming experience where you'll be enlightened? Do people have that? And he said, yes. Well, I don't know if any of you have that. I used to have that. I have this idea that if I just like really, really meditate, then my head's going to split open and I'll be happy forever and after. But all I got was a headache. And so that kind of meditation is simply another ego trip, isn't it? I'm determined and I will become someone who is enlightened, who isn't this other. But the humility of awakeness is it accepts all things, rejects none, and yet does not identify with them. It doesn't reject things. So to not reject my own fears, not reject my own pettiness and jealousies and all those things, and to see them, witness them as objects, means that they can begin to cease because they come up through the mind, become conscious, and they get released. And then the heart's natural response to life is no longer from egotism, selfishness, and all the rest. Its natural response is the Brahma Viharas, is goodwill, is compassion, is joy, is kindness. But the journey quite often requires quite a lot of courage and bravery to face like strong fears or like petty jealousies or raging angers. All kinds of things can come up. And that's where the test of the practice is not when you're really, everything's going nice and you just did a nice metta meditation and the birds are at your bird feeder and it's all going well, da-da-da-da-da. No, it's when your buttons get pressed, isn't it? And when buttons get pressed, what happens is this kind of momentum of anusaya, we call it, these latent tendencies come into consciousness. Now, if you can be mindful of it, it's a good thing. So I'm not saying that just suffering is a great thing per se. It's only if you can be mindful of it. And so, just talking to people, say people who have like trauma from the past, how difficult it is to deal with that. I just kind of talking with, as a senior monk, I talk a lot with people about these things, and trauma, the anusaya, the resultant karma, the momentum of negativity is so very, very powerful, so powerful that it takes a lot of encouragement and patience and loving kindness with this person to endure, because they have to endure it as it comes up into consciousness. There's no magic formula for that. And then there's just the garden variety of habits that we have as kids or as in our cultural habits and our biases. So if we use the mirrors of the Brahma Viharas, that goodwill is important, and goodwill is our Kalyana Mitta. If we use the mirror of compassion, compassion is important, and it is a mirror to my own cruelties. And joy. And joy is very important. Otherwise, this whole Buddhist thing is it's like Ajahn Sumedho would say, what do you say? It's brain surgery without anesthesia. No thanks. And that's when you're kind of just in there and you're analyzing and you're understanding and you're fighting with your defilements and you're really, sucking into it and you're meditating and you're reading and oh my gosh. So there is joy. There is beauty in the world. And I think it's very, very important to actually have the sensibility to open up the mind. And if the mind is always in thought, if the mind is always in worry, if the mind is always in self-analysis and self-criticism and self-doubt, then it can't notice the color of a oak tree or the color of I saw a scarlet tanager on my bird feeder. For those of you who are in North America, for us, it's a really rare bird. Fabulous thing. Anyway, beautiful. It really is beautiful. Now, you could say, oh, Viradhammo, you're just indulging again in beauty. Get back to your cushion and close the windows, make it all dark, and just drink salt water for 5 days or something like that. But that's not life, right? That'd be horrible. So there is beauty, and there's beauty in others, isn't there? Like when we're not self-concerned all the time, because I fear that sometimes Buddhist practice can be just self-concern all the time. My practice, my this and my that. And yet, if you just stop and you look and you see, well, there's a person that's really beautiful or really happy or really skillful or whatever, you're not in the kind of ego state. You're not in the self-consumed state. And that's important. That's very, very important. That uplift of joy. Peace is upekkha. We say it's equanimity. And then you get very self-judgmental about that. The equanimity. Well, that means that I just don't react, right? Okay, do it. Don't react. For the next 48 hours, don't react to anything. Good luck. Again, I don't think it works that way. But to notice that reactions arise and cease in the silence of awareness is another way to look at peace. So you can peacefully coexist with negativity. You have to have a lot of patience, you have to have a lot of understanding that feeling negative is all right. It's not a problem. It's not who you are. It's simply an object in awareness. And that's where the teachings of Anicca Dukkha Anatta are very important. This is an object. It's not you. It's not who you are. It arises. It endures for a while. It ceases. And this, I think, for me, was Luang Por Cha's constant emphasis on uncertainty. And he was so rigorous in that emphasis. It's uncertain. It's uncertain. Now, if you take it wrongly, you can just get caught in doubt. But that's not what it's doing. It's bringing a perception to mind as opposed to an analysis. A doubtful analysis is thought, but that's not what we mean, or what Luang Por Cha, I think, meant by anicca sanya. Anicca sanya is the perception of uncertainty. This is not sure. So I have a judgment or a perception about someone. Luang Por Cha would say it's uncertain. These people would go to him and say, I've had this fabulous experience. I think I'm a stream enter. Luang Por Cha would say, it's uncertain. Or he'd say, are you? And he'd bring him back into doubt. Now, uncertainty sounds like a bit of a bummer, bit of a drag, but what uncertainty does, it actually brings you to silence if you know how to use that perception. I don't know. It's not a judgment, it's not thought. So it takes you away from the rabid thinking that we all get caught up into. And the silence of awareness, what makes that difficult? It's our obsession with thought. And then we meditate and then we try to get rid of thought. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But seeing thought, seeing the end of a thought, seeing the gap after thought, awakening to like, oh, this is fear, or this is judgment. That awakened mind then is not denying thought, but it's knowing thought as an object. As you get good at that, then the space and silence, which is around thoughts, becomes more apparent. And then what we mean by upekkha, or the peace of awareness, or the silence of awareness, becomes more and more apparent. This takes tremendous courage, actually. It takes courage if there's material from your childhood, or from, you got fired at work, or there was some, like you weren't able to be at your mother's deathbed, or all kinds of things can affect our memory patterns, our memory traces very, very strongly. And so the ability then to say, okay, it's like this, clears these things away. For someone who has had trauma or deep trauma, the clearing is not easy. It takes a long, long time. But what else is there to do? The refuge is in the awakened mind. The experience that the awakened mind has is individual, depends on so many other things. But what is there to do? So in modern culture, we have very good ways of like dealing with trauma and not the drug things. I think the I don't know about drugs, but the skill of practitioners who understand trauma, but they're doing the same thing. They're making things conscious and then seeing you are not that. That's not your real home. That's not who you are. And so I always recommend that when life is just ordinary and it's not extreme or stressed or pressurized, try to create times like that, but also just come to that simple witnessing. I use sound a lot. Just listen and notice the witnessing consciousness, rather than like always making meditation a job, where I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do this practice and that, which is okay, that's fine. But just to get to that sense of witnessing awareness, awakened consciousness, getting confident with that in an easy way, and carrying that around in the ordinariness of life, walking from A to B. Oftentimes life is too complicated. You have complicated things you have to deal with, and the mind has to deal with the objects of life. But oftentimes it's not. And the more one intuits this awakened mind, the more one touches it, the more one senses that, yeah, that is a refuge. That's always there. The more one will incline to that. And the less threatening these other things are. So I think that's all that comes to mind for now. Maybe anyone has any questions?
Dhamayang Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam Dhamma Se Sadhu 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 Anumodami. Thank you very much, Luang Por.
Vita, any questions for anyone? There we go. Hi, Joey.
Yes, it's Joey from Bangkok. Joey.
How you been, Joey?
Grab Namaskar, Ajahn. We're very good here in Thailand.
Okay.
And in fact, today we begin our retreat with Ajahn Yaniko. So I think
great.
it was you who put us in touch with Ajahn Yaniko.
Yeah, I encourage him to do that. Lovely. Very good. Okay. I'm curious how that goes.
We'll send you a report.
Thank you. Report card for Yaniko.
Thank you for your teaching, and thank you for always reminding us about being aware and finding that space. I think we all try to create that space and find awareness in our thoughts. How do we make it a little bit more sustainable? How do we stretch it out a little bit more? Is my question.
That's the $64,000 question, isn't it? How do you do it? That's why guys like me just say the same thing all the time. It's just sort of, that's one way, just to get reminded again and again and again. But the insight, I think, of what the awakened mind is important. So the insight of non-becoming and non-resistance, you know, the way I like to talk, which is around bhava and vibhava tanha. I think that's very important, that you get a feeling of the difference between the awakened mind and trying to become someone who has an awakened mind. And once you get that difference, then you begin to see the becoming and the resistance to life. And as you see becoming and resistance, the stability of the awakened mind becomes more profound. So I'd say that insight, first of all, is terribly important. It's not in time. It's always like, oh, it's like this now. And reinforcing that. And then noticing where in one's inner life is there a lot of I thinking, me and my thinking. And trying to fathom the emotional basis of that. It might be just a mind that loves analysis all the time, loves doubting. It might be a mind which is into worry. It might be a mind that just likes to go shopping on the internet or whatever. It obsesses in some kind of a way. So, like, rather than think, oh, there I go, I'm thinking about, you know, buying another Buddha. I'm not actually, I just saw Buddha there. But anyway, I'm just thinking about this again. Oh, I shouldn't be doing that. That's not mindfulness, right? That's not awakening. So you could say, well, there's a pattern. What is that pattern? There's a pattern of thinking. Oh, that pattern is coming from greed. It's not so easy. You know, it's easy for me to put the words. You say, oh, that's doubting. So then you can warn yourself. It's okay, what the mind's doing now, it's into self-disparagement, or it's into criticism of others, or it's into judgment, or it's into fantasy. Well, that's where it's going. So you get a sense of the momentum now of the defilement, the momentum of the habit, as it were. And you say to yourself, oh, okay, that's going to come up a lot now. I'm going to try to just witness it. So I'm kind of forewarned. And it comes up again. Oh, there it is. Yeah, worry, where it feels this way. It comes again, where it feels this way. So that's very helpful. Getting to the roots of the obsessive mind or thinking mind, which is unskillful, the unskillful parts of the thinking mind, understanding the kind of momentums or the deeper reasons for that. It might be just like boredom, like people are just bored with life, so they go out into an object. And you say, okay, what if I don't go out into that object? What if I don't open up the emails, or what if I don't do whatever? What's that going to feel like? So understanding your own karma that way. That's to me very important. I always say a long morning meditation is, if possible, very important, very helpful. And I mean long, like an hour would be good. I know a lot of people are just too busy to do that, but there's lots of people who can fit that in. The thing about a long meditation, if you're not falling asleep in the morning, is that it sets up a momentum of the awake mind for the day, obviously. And you know that you have a good meditation. So that's very, very important. And then reminders like teachings, books, Buddha Rupas, retreats, those reminders are very, very helpful. And then, like, quite often, you kind of just, I don't know, for me, you intuitively, like, you've studied a lot of Dhamma, you know, you have a background in study and practice and so on. So just in your own investigation of how your mind works and what it does, usually you come up with some intuitions about something about your mind you'd like to really look at. I really like to look at, like, maybe like cynicism, or I really like to look at something like that. And you make that like a project. So there's a kind of theme that you start to run. You remember that one year I said, why don't you look at resistance? Why don't we as a group look at resistance? And that kind of sharpens the mind. And it's not just the general blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, what's resistance? So this is the idea of Dhamma Vijaya, where you bring in Dharma theme, not just from an academic part. You bring in a Dharma theme and then try to see, where is that in the mind? So you're breaking down the ego thinking, the self-thinking, the self-judgment, down into more deeper understanding of Dhamma. So it might be, let's say, like bhava, becoming. So let's say you start thinking about the end of the retreat, or you start thinking about maybe coming here again next year, or you start thinking about, and you, oh, well, that's bhava. That's what it is. That's just becoming. And all of a sudden you're behind now the storyline. You're not just in the storyline. If you're in the storyline, then you tend to say, oh, shut up. Just be in the moment, be present, just be awake. But that's not really awareness. And you say, oh, that's becoming, that's bhava. I get it, that's bhava tanha. And now you're sort of behind the storyline, which is very, very helpful. You see more deep, and then you see the bhava coming again and again. That's bhava. So you're identifying now as dharma rather than being this foolish fellow who thinks all the time. And you know, he's inadequate in his meditation, whatever we might say in that way. So yeah, you know, it's a kind of creative thing too, but not, I would say it's not overly analytical. If it's analytical, usually people just think too much. You know, and usually the thinking is me and my making. This is more substantial, I would say more fundamental to that. Okay, just some ideas.
Thank you, Papa.
Good luck on the retreat. Give my best to Ajahn Yaniko.
Will do.
Okay. Suzanne, please. There we go. Okay.
Ajahn, thank you. Do you think that, you know, when I hear Dharma talks and practice individually and then go to monasteries, sometimes I think that there's a double standard between monastics and lay people. And that may sound judgmental, and I don't mean I don't mean to be judgmental, but you know, the fact that monastics live or try to live these teachings and have the Vinaya, they get a better crack at this stuff, you know.
What were you doing when you were 22?
I was not in a geographical area, Ajahn,
Neither was I.
where Buddhist, but you were, as a young man, it's easier for a young man to be touring the world.
But not
running
all
here.
men toured the world and went to monasteries.
Okay. So what, Ajahn, what are you getting at? Are you,
I'm just
you're
saying that
deflating.
things happen, and you've got your situation, right? And what's the point of like comparing you to me? You just got to deal with your situation. And if the teaching I give sounds too monastic or too impossible,
No.
so then you have to find another fellow. But that I would say that thinking is unskillful because it takes you to kind of sense the self and other.
Okay.
It's not the thinking of Dharma, it's a thinking of cultural limitations, and that has its, that has its place, I would say. So if you're treated in a monastery unfairly or poorly, then you have to address the culture of that monastery. Those things are important too. But in this instance, to start to create yourself as someone who has inadequate possibilities as opposed to monastics who have really perfect possibilities doesn't really help. It's a kind of thinking that would probably infect your mind. It probably comes from the same kinds of thinking, right? So I would suggest, without dismissing what you're saying, I would suggest, where's that thinking coming from?
Okay.
And is it profitable? Is it useful to go into that stream of thinking, right? And if it is, okay, do so. And then if in monastic cultures there are standards of unfairness, then okay, you can try to address it within those monastery boundaries or not go there. These are social problems and social situations which are very individual to time and place. So you can't, in this kind of a format, really can't really take that on. It has to be more particular in each situation. But so I would say, look at where that thought is coming from.
Okay.
And does it lead to well-being? Does it lead to peace? Does it lead to liberation? Or does it create a sense of self and whatever? That makes sense?
Well, you're reframing this or putting it in a larger context. It's clear to me that this is a comparative mind. And that is not helpful, Ajahn. It's just not helpful. It just isn't. So I can clearly own that. It's really alive and well, but I can work with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then see where is that comparing mind skillful and where is it unskillful? That's not to dismiss it. Where does that comparing mind lead to suffering? Where does it lead to skillful activities in the world? So you're not just like judging yourself. I shouldn't have a comparative mind, but what's the usefulness of comparison, and in which situation is it useful? So you're becoming reflective, right, around a particular mind pattern, not dismissing it, but seeing, and then seeing, is it a mind pattern which creates a lot of suffering?
Right.
Or not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Ajahn, I got it.
Okay, good.
Thank you. 1,000,000 pals. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Jake. Please.
Hello, Luang Por. It's good to see you. Long time listener, first time caller. I appreciate the Dhamma talk earlier and the discussion so far. There was discussion earlier about awareness, and I've been struggling with that, as I'm sure a lot of people do. In my mindfulness in general on the cushion and in daily life, I've noticed I have a very strong compulsion to bring a controlling element to it, especially in meditation, breath meditation in particular. I'll bring awareness to my breath and to the sensations in my body, but when I bring awareness to my breath, there becomes a controlling element, and I'll feel my diaphragm tighten, or I'll feel the body parts kind of expand and contract in a different unnatural order. And when I'm off the cushion, I'll feel sensations in a leg or an arm. And when I bring that awareness there, it's like my body just generates something extra to make things more noticeable, I guess. So my question is, how can we develop that real gentle awareness that doesn't really involve an intercession and changing things?
Right. Good question. Yeah. That's not uncommon with the breath meditation, not uncommon. I think that comes from, well, I don't know about you, but in kind of, when I speak with practitioners, quite often the ideas of concentration have been instilled into people's minds, and they think they have to, hold on to the breath and suppress thought. And from what I've seen, that doesn't work. So I think it's a misunderstanding of concentration and meditation and awareness. Now, obviously, you've got some insight, whether that's true what I just said or not. You have some insight, which is important, and the insight is around the sense of control. So that has to be your theme. What does control feel like? Mm-hmm. So one thing you want to experiment with is not doing breath meditation, and then of course you will do breath meditation because that's what you've been doing. Your mind will go there, and when your mind goes to the breath, then it's a suggestion, try it, but main issue is control, right? Main issue is control. That's what you're looking at. Then just try doing nothing. So sit in a chair, half an hour, whatever, and just be. So you're going against your very strong conditioning to now concentrate on the breath in order to get peace or suppress thought, whatever. But if we don't even know why we're doing it, how we're doing it. But you're creating a different suggestion to the mind of just being. Then just try listening to sound. So give up the breath. Your habit will go to the breath. It'll feel foreign not to do that. But it'll go to the breath, and you'll feel it say, yeah, the breath is like that, but I'll just listen. I think I'll just listen. So listening is actually a very good way of going beyond this kind of control thing that many of us suffer from, because listening is a very receptive organ. I mean, you can go out to sound. We tend to just let sounds come to you. Now, the difficulty with that is you won't feel like you're doing anything. With control, it feels like you are doing something. I'm achieving something. I'm getting somewhere. And there's a lot of literature which is about achievement and levels and grades and blah, 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 blah. And if you read a lot of that, the mind can be very programmed to get something, which is bhava tanha. And then it wants to get rid of something else, which is vibhava tanha. So that's the danger of all those teachings of this level, that level, this attainment, that attainment. We can get quite messed up with that. Intellectually, it sounds very alluring. Wow, I'd love some of that stuff. And obviously, that's the stuff I should be getting. But then we sit down with this agenda of becoming. So, to unravel that is difficult, because now it can get very programmed deep in the psyche about what meditation is about. So I would suggest that, like, come back to what's really meditation about. It's about awakening rather than becoming, and play with that idea, and vis-a-vis control. So the control mind will be about bhava. You know the Pali bhava and vibhava, do you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So becoming and getting rid of, and then see what's the awakened mind. Well, the awakened mind just knows. It's like this, right? Like Luang Por keeps telling us. It's like this. So get in touch with that. So sit in your chair, listen to sound. Sound is like this, the awakened mind. Try to trust that. And then from that awakened mind, you start to notice control. If you never get to the point of the awakened mind, you never really notice control, because control is everything. all meditation is about control and getting rid of it. So somehow you have to recede back from the conditioning of that controlling to the simplicity of sound is like this, but don't use the breath, I would say. Keep breathing, but just come to taste is like this, the simplicity of that, and trust in that. First of all, you have to recognize that. You sound is like this. This is the awakened mind. Keep encouraging that. Then from that, when the control mechanism starts to come up, you'll be able to see that as an energy in awareness. But you have to get the mind to this sense of awakened knowing to the way things are. If you try to get rid of control, yeah, of course you'd be more controlling. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? So it's hopeless. So don't worry about the control. Contemplate what the awakened mind is first. What is that? And it's very ordinary. And then then if ideas come up, yeah, but it's so ordinary, it's nothing. I mean, all these levels, that's the real stuff. Oh yeah. And then your mind becomes a self and tries to attain and get all that. So come back to that awakeness like this and trust in that and see if you can work from there to understand control. But your question is very pertinent, because a lot of people have taken on meditation as this kind of control mechanism rather than an awakening thing. And it can be very frustrating because people are diligent. They really, have a sincere aspiration. So look at that whole package. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much, Luang Por. I'm definitely a control freak in life, and so it's been a compulsion I've dealt with for a long time. But I really appreciate your advice, especially as you're framing as recognizing the awakened mind, and then the craving to control comes up, and realize that is bhava or vibhava, different elements. And I also like to just see it that it causes me so much dukkha. Just reiterating to myself that I'm suffering when I do this, and right. Just to try to nurture that instead of compulsion to control it, to let go, which is really hard. But
very hard, yeah. Are you aware of like the underlying energy of the control? Is it fear or just habit or?
I think it's a lot of elements. I think habit definitely comes into play. I think there's probably a fear element that if I can't have my environment orderly and in the way I want, when things aren't orderly, bad things happen in my mind, I suppose. So there's a lot of contemplation.
Can you make conscious fear?
Yes.
Then that, to me, would be one of the main elements that you would try to awaken to. Fear feels like this. And it feels very threatening because we fear. But if you have a safe environment and you have people who are helpful and you feel, oh yeah, okay, what's fear really feel like? Then bodily awareness should click in around the feelings of fear in the chest and in the guts. And then if you can trust in awareness, know the fear is fear, then you've got the right path. It takes some doing. It takes some doing but if you can just nudge yourself into it, not as a kind of attack of fear, right? Mara, I'm going to get you, Mara, not that, but rather just like nudge your way into, where is this coming from? In a kind of gentle way, in a persuasive way, rather than just a battle. Then you'll have more gentleness around you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Are you in Minnesota?
I am. Canada's 11th province. Yeah, I'm in Minneapolis, so.
Okay, Jay, thank you.
Thank you, Luang Por. Thank you.
All right. Hey, Mike.
One more question, Mike.
There's Mike. Hi, Mike.
Luang Por, thank you for teaching today.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to wait for about an hour in a medical lobby with some news playing in the background the other day. And I thought, Luang Por Viradhammo teaches that one can just be aware of sound. So maybe I'll, try that in this situation. And, so I reflected on that, and, the sound was in awareness, but lots of perceptions were arising because, the news is playing, the debt ceiling, traffic on the 401, and, those perceptions are also in awareness. But, one thing that I also reflected on was your statement about, or at least reflected upon as I formed this question, is your statement about disinterest, or your teaching on meditation about disinterest at a recent talk. I found I was very interested, all those concepts that come up, it was all I could do to keep myself from, kind of latching onto them. I wasn't in a particular meditative state, so I could, quite easily see the propensity for distraction, and, sort of saw that sort of clinging to sort of fabricating a sense of self out of that, perhaps, or, just sort of trying to think about why is that so interesting? I mean, it's just kind of uninteresting stuff, on the face of it. But yet when I'm there with just that, I really, keep grabbing at it,
Well, we love gossip.
Yeah.
We humans love gossip. And somehow we love violence. I mean, we're just weird. and like we like extremes. We get drawn to extremes. And why do people watch horror movies? Right? It's quite interesting that way. So there's something about the sense mind, it likes to be stimulated in these bizarre ways, which make no rational sense when you think about it. So what to do? I mean, that's why we do practice sense restraint. So you go to the nurse and say, would you turn that off, please? I mean, that's quite valid. That's okay to do. But then if what I usually, I mean, I don't do it much, but earlier I would do mantras under my breath. If something was really grabbing my attention, then I would just do a mantra or chant dependent origination of something under my breath, and that would keep me preoccupied in a wholesome way. But if I just wanted to watch like how the mind was reacting, I could do that too. So it depended how interested I was. But the basic thing I was talking about in that talk was this disinterest in the khandhas, in sense experience, is the turn towards nibbana, isn't it? That's what we mean by nibbida, kind of world weariness. And that basic turning away doesn't mean that sometimes you're not fascinated by things, but your fascination is limited by, okay, I've been there, I've done that. So don't be too harsh on, we needn't be harsh on ourselves, as long as we realize that peace does not lie in changing conditions. Peace lies only in the awakened heart. And then, we get it, we get attracted or distracted by things, but you have a deeper meaning in life. It's not out there. It's not out there. It's back here in the heart. If you have that deeper meaning, then those other things will work their way out. But if one really believes, but doesn't see that the world is this addictive kind of sense-changing experience, and one's always out there, then of course samsara is endless. This goes on and on and on. And you have enough practice and integrity that, it's not a big thing. It's just the way the mind works. It just likes to get distracted.
Luang Por, do you think there's a benefit to quantifying those things when they come up? Like when you notice it I mean, I tend to be very granular, and I think one thing I've appreciated about your teaching is that movement away from over-analysis. But I think also finding that delicate balance of, well, is this clinging? And if so, what type of clinging? What am I clinging to here? What's the craving here? I mean, is that worth reflecting on?
I don't find that helpful anymore. I might have at some point, but now I find helpful abiding in the heart chakra rather than being in the head. So for me, it's very simple. Kind of like the receptive awareness always triggers the heart chakra. And then if I'm going into thought, it's very much in the brain. So, I mean, I do use the brain every now and then. It's a good organ to exercise every now and then. But like having an abiding which isn't in thought, to me is very, very helpful. An abiding of self-compassion, and I just do that through a body awareness which is aware of the heart chakra. It just seems to me that when there is a true letting go of self-thinking or thinking in general, the attention seems to rest in the heart. So that's what I try to kind of cultivate. Like if I'm going to the wood shop to get a piece of wood or something like that, I try to be there, that kind of thing. So do you have a refuge, a somatic refuge, I'd say, a place to go to in different situations, or is the refuge always in thought, in analysis and judgment? Is it always that? If it is, I would suggest, is that a good thing, that the default mechanism is always thought? Is there not maybe another possibility? Because the default mechanisms are the habits that we have. So you might just look at that.
Yeah, thank you. I think the default mechanism is thought in daily life, perhaps not on the cushion though. So I mean,
Okay.
perhaps in daily life, I don't necessarily go to say the breath or Buddha or
Yeah.
one of those meditation objects as often as I'll go to, this is interesting what's coming up, how can I fit this into some sort of category?
But like, is the default mechanism in thought, is it a rational default mechanism, or is it a kind of emotional mechanism that is just habitual? So certainly when there's a problem, I have to go to thought and solve the problem. But is it always that way? Or is it sometimes just that's what the mind always does?
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
I
qual.
think, yeah. Well, then I'll think about it.
There you go. Okay, Mike, be well. Are we done, Beta?
It looks like it, Luang Por. No more hands and no more questions in the chat.
Okay. Nice to be with everyone. Shall we finish with the Metta Sutta?
Yes, please, Luang Por. I'll put it up.
Can you post it up for us? This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, upwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views. The pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay.
Thank you, Luang Por. Let us all now together as a Sangha community globally pay respects to Luang Por by chanting Araham. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammam Namaskami Subhadivado
All right, everyone, be well. See you, William, Corina, see you in Italy. And Michael and Zito, see you in Italy. And anyone else? Okay, bye-bye, see you next time, be well. Ciao. Ciao, Bombini.